So why does this happen? It is rarely just bad luck. It is usually the result of three specific failure points that most people never see coming until it is too late. The first failure point is the habit of prematurely accessing retirement accounts. When people switch jobs, a staggering 40% of workers decide to cash out their 401k plans rather than rolling them over into a new account. While that immediate cash might feel like a win today, the long-term cost is invisible and devastating. If you are 28 and you cash out a $15,000 account, you are not just losing that money. After taxes and penalties, you might only walk away with $10,000, but you have sacrificed over 37 years of compound growth. At an 8% annual return, that single decision can quietly erase more than $250,000 of potential retirement wealth by the time you reach retirement age. And what makes it worse is that this loss is rarely felt immediately. It accumulates in the background, year after year, as compounding would have worked in your favor, but is no longer there. The second failure point is the dangerous assumption that you can simply catch up later, often due to a collapse in your savings rate during middle adulthood. Many people start strong in their 20s, but as soon as the expenses of children, home ownership, and lifestyle inflation kick in, they pause their contributions. The problem is that retirement investing is not linear. It is heavily weighted toward early and consistent compounding. Losing even 10 to 15 years of meaningful contributions creates a gap that later catch-up deposits rarely close. Because time is the most powerful factor in growth, not just the amount invested. By the time people realize this, they are often trying to compensate with higher risk bets or unrealistic savings rates that their budget can no longer support. The third failure point is ignoring fees, debt drag, and inefficient investment choices, which quietly erode returns year after year. Even a 1 to 2% difference in fees or interest leakage can translate into hundreds of thousands lost over a working lifetime, effectively canceling out years of disciplined saving without the person ever noticing it happening. The third failure point is the fatal choice of leaving your money in default, low-yield investment vehicles. Many people never actively choose their investment strategy at all. Instead, their funds sit in conservative default options or overly cautious allocations that prioritize safety over growth. While this feels secure, it often barely keeps pace with inflation, meaning the real purchasing power of their retirement fund stagnates or even declines over time. Over a 20 to 30-year horizon, the difference between a properly diversified equity-based portfolio and a low-yield cash-like allocation can easily be measured in hundreds of thousands of dollars. The deeper issue is inertia. Once the account is opened, people assume it is taken care of, when in reality, it requires at least a basic level of optimization. Without it, even consistent contributions are weakened by suboptimal returns, high hidden fees, and inflation erosion. When you combine all three failure points, early withdrawals, interrupted contributions, and poor investment selection, you get a predictable outcome. People who worked and saved for decades still find themselves far behind where they expected to be, not because they failed to earn money, but because they failed to preserve and grow it correctly over time. Many workers leave their 401k contributions sitting in default money market funds, earning a measly 2% to 3% annually. Over the course of a career, the gap between that 3% return and a standard 8% market return is astronomical. If you invest $400 a month for 35 years at 3%, you end up with roughly $295,000. But at 8%, that same money grows to approximately $870,000. The investment choice alone creates a $575,000 gap for the exact same amount of work. One person retires in comfort, and the other retires with $88,400, simply because of how the money was allocated in the background. So, how do we actually escape this trap? You cannot accidentally save your way to a comfortable retirement. You have to be intentional. The first differentiator is early automation. People who retire comfortably set up automatic contributions before they ever see the money in their paycheck, meaning they build their spending habits around what is left, rather than trying to save what remains after spending. If you are relying on manual saving, you are setting yourself up to fail because the intention to save rarely converts to action when expenses inevitably mount. The second factor is your contribution rate. Comfortable retirees consistently save 15 to 20% of their income, whereas those retiring with $88,400 typically save 5% or less. Pattern. Interrupt. Think about that for a second. The difference between a comfortable retirement and a precarious one often comes down to just the cost of a modest daily lunch. Does that daily coffee or sandwich really feel worth jeopardizing your entire future security? Moving on, your investment strategy is equally critical. You must maintain age-appropriate stock allocations and avoid the panic selling that destroys wealth during market downturns. Furthermore, debt management becomes a decisive factor in retirement stability. Entering retirement with ongoing obligations such as car loans, personal loans, or credit card balances creates a structural cash flow problem. Your income becomes fixed, but your expenses remain variable and elevated. Even modest monthly payments can steadily erode the limited liquidity retirees rely on, forcing withdrawals from savings at precisely the time when preserving capital is most critical. Then there is the second major constraint, healthcare. It is often underestimated because it feels abstract during working years, but it becomes one of the largest and most unavoidable costs in later life. For many couples retiring today, total lifetime healthcare expenses can reach hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on longevity, medical needs, and insurance coverage gaps. A commonly cited estimate is around $300,000 or more for a couple, meaning that insufficient planning in this area can rapidly overwhelm even a seemingly adequate nest egg. When you combine debt obligations, healthcare exposure, and under-optimized savings behavior, the conclusion becomes straightforward. Retirement outcomes are not random. They are largely a reflection of consistent financial decisions made over decades. In other words, the median retirement is simply the result of median behavior, average savings rates, average investment choices, and average discipline around debt and planning compounded over time into a predictable financial outcome. You don't have to follow that trajectory. Small, consistent choices, like increasing your savings rate by just 1% annually or keeping your money properly invested, compound over decades into drastically different financial outcomes. The key is not dramatic one-time actions, but persistent behavioral adjustments that gradually shift your trajectory. For example, someone who consistently redirects small daily expenses, like preparing meals instead of buying them, can free up additional capital that, when invested, becomes meaningful over time. It is not the single act that matters, but the repetition and the time horizon over which those decisions are allowed to compound. The same principle applies later in life as well. Even if someone is in their 50s with limited savings, there is still room to improve the outcome, increasing the savings rate more aggressively, reducing unnecessary debt exposure, optimizing investment allocation, and in some cases, delaying retirement by a few years can significantly extend the accumulation and compounding window. Those extra working years often have an outsized effect because they prevent early withdrawals while allowing assets to continue growing. The broader point is that retirement outcomes are not fixed at any single moment. They are continuously shaped by ongoing decisions. While time is the most powerful variable in compounding, behavior determines how effectively that time is used. The only real failure is knowing the stakes and choosing not to act. If you found this breakdown of the default retirement path eye-opening, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more actionable financial strategies. And for the comment bait, looking at your current budget, what is the single biggest expense you are willing to cut or optimize this month to boost your retirement contributions? Let me know down below.